These are some more of the factoring problems on worksheet number 2. I wanted to just address some problems that people had, commented about or asked me about in class. If you look at number 18, for instance, 6x to the fourth minus 4x squared plus 8x. Remember, the first thing we always want to do is check for a GCF, so we're going to do that first. I noticed that each one of these terms has at least one x in it. The last term only has one x, so I can only take one of those out. So I'll go ahead and write that down, checking for that GCF first. And then each one of these numbers is also divisible by 2, so let me pull that out. Now, let's go see what we have as our leftovers out of each term. First of all, I'm just going to do the number part. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and then if I look at the x's, x to the fourth, take out 1x, would leave me with x cubed. Now I'm just going to copy the sign down because I didn't factor out a negative. I'm going to say 4 divided by 2 is 2, and I had x squared, and I took an x out, so I have 1x left. Then I'm going to copy down the plus sign. And I'm going to say 8 divided by 2 is 4, and I had an x, but I took it out, so there's no x's left. Now, most of the time when you take a GCF on this worksheet, you've been able to factor what's left inside, but here, this will not factor. We don't have a factoring pattern for cubes yet, and even if we did, this one wouldn't factor with that one. So you actually learn some ways to handle that in Algebra 2. So, but we're done with that one at this point. There's no more we can do, so our answer is just that 2x times 3x cubed minus 2x plus 4. So not everything breaks down when you take the GCF out. Let's look at number 17, though. I have a feeling it will. 6x cubed minus 2x squared plus 8x. If you look at this one, we can get an x out of every term, so I'll write it out front. And all those terms also can be divided by 2, so I'll pull the 2 out. So that's 2x is my GCF. Now I'm going to go for my leftovers. 6 divided by 2 is 3. I had x cubed, but I took an x out of it, so there is x squared left. I'm going to copy down my subtraction sign. 2 divided by 2 is 1. If I don't have any other leftovers, I need to write 1 down, but I can tell I'm going to have some more leftovers, so I'm not going to write it down. I had x squared, but I divided out an x, so I have an x left. If you want to put a 1 in there, you can. It's just that we wouldn't put that in our final answer. All right, I'm going to also now copy down the plus sign. 8 divided by 2 is 4. I had an x, but I took it out, so there's no x's left. Okay, so at this point, I've got the GCF out. And remember, that's the first thing we do with every problem is check for it. There may not be one, but if there is one, it's going to just make everything go so much more smoothly for you if you get it out at the first. All right, so now we've got to check what's left on the inside. I see that it's got a square, so there's the possibility that it might factor. So I'm going to keep up with my 2x, and I'm going to see if I can't factor that term that I underlined in yellow inside the parentheses since it's a square. All right, I'm looking for the ways to multiply to get 3 in this first spot here. And I know there's only 1 times 3. So if I wanted to, I could say 1x or just x times 3x. I could go ahead and write that in there if I just want to write it down. I still have to think about, though, how it combines to get this number 4 that's in the last spot. And so I'm going to write 4 down. And it's positive, so I neither need 2 pluses or 2 minuses when I multiply, 2 negatives when I multiply to get it. And I know I need to look at the negatives here because I see this subtraction sign that I'm highlighting at this point. I could pretty much tell you because I see that subtraction sign, I got to have some subtraction signs, some negatives show up somewhere, so I'm not even going to worry about putting down 1 times 4 and 2 times 2, the positive choices, because some subtraction signs have to show up somewhere, so they're going to have to be here. It's either going to be -1 times -4 and -2 times -2. The reason I only wrote those down is just think about it. That right there already cut in half the number of things I had to try out when I multiply my numbers. So that's always a good thing when you can do some things to cut out how much work you're going to have to do. One of the good things about this problem is there's only one way to get that 3, so I don't have to do too much checking. If you look, I'm trying to get a -1, that invisible 1. I wrote it in now. I need to combine numbers to get a -1, and here's something I'm noticing. I know I've got 1 and 3. I know 3 and 4 are 1 apart, So it's probably going to be this combination here, because if I would say 3 times, negative 1 and 1 times negative 4, you would think I'd be able to find a way to get that. I don't actually know if it's going to work, though, or not, so let's see. If I said 3 times negative 1, that would be negative 3, and if I combined it this way, I'd get negative 3, but here I'm getting negative 4, and that adds up to negative 7. It looks like maybe that would factor, but I'm beginning to think it's not going to. If I multiply 3 times 4, I'm going to get negative 12, and 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, and this is not working out so well for me here. So maybe I go ahead and check the 2's, but there's really only one way to combine that 1 and that 3 with negative 2 and negative 2, because it's the same number twice. That would be 3 times negative 2 would be negative 6, and 1 times negative 2 would be negative 2, and that's going to add up to negative 8. So actually, even though it looked like this problem was going to factor further, I have to still try and see if it's going to work. I never know whether it will or not, but for 17, that's as far as we can go. Okay, so I'll just do another one just because I can, I guess. I don't remember which one of these we did in class. I'm just going to go up and pick up 16, okay? So I know I'm going out of order. I went 18, 17, 16, but that's okay. So 16 is 3x squared plus x minus 2. And if it factors, and remember, you never know, they may put something on here that won't factor just to kind of see if you can figure out, and have some confidence that you're right. So I've got to multiply to get 3. I need all the numbers that multiply to get 3, and that's going to be 3 times 1. So right now I already know that I'm going to have, if it factors, there will be a 3x and there will be an x. So I could write it down if I wanted to, but I still need to see how it's going to combine with the numbers that I need to multiply to get negative 2. Well, let's see. How can we get a negative 2? You could say negative 1 times 2 or 1 times negative 2. Okay? So we know it's got to combine with a 3, so it's not too bad here. We don't have too many choices to look at, so we could just do them one at a time. I need a positive 1, don't I? That's that invisible 1 that's there. I'm going to write it in, and you can too if it helps you think better. If it, sometimes just having it written down just helps you think a little bit better about it. I know that if I've got 3's and 2's, that if I had a plus 3 and a minus 2, 3 minus 2 would give me the plus 1 that I'm looking for. So how could I get a plus 3 and a minus 2? Look at this. 3 times 1 is 3, and then 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. That would work, wouldn't it? So that means the 3 here needs to multiply with a 1. Well, how do we get that middle term? It comes from multiplying the thing in the first spot and the last spot, and it comes, then we multiply the things in these two spots, then we add these two together after we've multiplied to get the middle term. Sorry for the line there. Let's see if I can undo that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now if I multiply the 3 times a 1, that 3 we need to track over here to a positive 1 since it's a positive 1. And if I need to get, well, there's only one other choice, right, for where to put the negative 2. But if you look, I had joined the 1 and the negative 2 together. So here's the 1. It's in front of that x. It's just invisible. And here's the negative 2. This multiplied would give me negative 2x. This multiplied would give me a plus 3x. So negative 2x and 3x would be my 1x. I factored it correctly. So, I mean, remember, you can go all the way through and distribute it to check to make sure you have the terms right if you want to check your work. But this is the correct answer, 3x minus 2 times x plus 1.